Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we find ourselves standing before a great stone wall, ancient and cold to the touch. Its surface weathered by centuries of silent prayers and quieter regrets. The monastery looms above, tall, gray, and more forbidding than any castle. Though the only weapon here is discipline, beyond these doors lies a life few would choose freely. The life of a medieval monk, a world of endless prayer, bitter cold, brutal routines, and an ever-watchful eye. Sometimes gods, but more often the abbots. You might think this is a place of peace and reflection. You might think it sounds like a restful retreat, but you would be wrong. You might not survive this one. So, before you settle in, feel free to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you are truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle hum in the background, and together, let's ease into tonight's story. Picture it. You rise before dawn, dragged from the thin promise of sleep by the insistent clang of a bell that sounds more like an accusation than a summons. The stone walls of your cell radiate last night's cold, seeping into your bones. There is no mattress, no blanket of comfort, just a pallet of straw that smells faintly of mildew and failed ambitions. This is a medieval monastery, not a sanctuary from the world, but a world with its own harsh laws and invisible prisons. You entered seeking holiness. You find hunger, exhaustion, and a daily cycle designed to strip away yourself, layer by freezing layer. There is no privacy, no indulgence, no softness. You eat because hunger won't let you forget your body, though your mind is expected to transcend it. You labor because the monastery must survive, even if your back does not. You pray, always endlessly, until the words run dry and only the sound remains. And above it all, there is the abbot, whose gaze weighs more heavily than the stone walls around you. Tonight, we will walk through this life, through bitter mornings and colder nights, through secrets buried beneath ancient abbeys, through halls where power once whispered louder than prayer. And you, of course, must endure it all, because here, there is no escape. You awaken, not with a stretch, not with a yawn, but with the dull ache of a body summoned too early. The bell tolls. A slow iron voice rolling through stone halls, louder than thought, heavier than sleep. It demands your presence before the stars have even begun to fade. The air in your dormitory is the kind that stings the lungs, cold enough to stiffen breath and freeze resolve. You pull the rough wool blanket tighter for a moment, then remember, hesitation is noticed. Hesitation has its consequences.
Out.
You swing your legs off the plank bed. The floor greets your bare feet like a block of ice that someone politely forgot to polish. Your bed, if one can call a sack of straw scattered over wood a bed, is already reclaiming its cold. It smells faintly of mildew, sweat, and the ghosts of 100 previous nights. You rise, already hungry, already tired. Around you, shadows shuffle, other monks indistinguishable in the gloom, moving with the same resignation. No words? Words are for prayers. Not for now. Not for each other. The dormitory is vast, echoing. A single guttering lamp guides your way. The walls seem to sweat cold. You wrap your robe tighter. Thick wool, scratchy against skin, woven less for comfort than for penance. Beneath it, nothing but the thin shirt you wore yesterday and the day before. Your sandals slap against the stone floor. Thin leather, hardly a barrier. Each step sends small protests up your legs. The cold here is not something you endure. It is something you become. And then, the chapel. A cavern of stone, older than memory. The smell hits you first. Ancient incense layered with the sour tang of bodies that have not known soap in weeks. You take your place on the wooden bench. It is harder than the stone beneath it, and colder still, Batanes begins. The chants rise, low, mournful, endless. Your mouth forms the words, your voice joins the others. You feel neither reverence nor release, only the weight of ritual. A river of sound in which you must drown quietly. Your knees ache from the hours of kneeling. Your back stiffens. Somewhere between the second psalm and the third lesson, hunger stirs. A small, sharp reminder that your body, unlike your soul, cannot be distracted forever. When the service ends, there is no relief, only transition. You move from prayer to labor as seamlessly as the bell allows.
Hey.
Perhaps you had once thought a monastery meant a life of books and study, of gentle reflection. Here, your reflection happens over a hoe or a shovel, or while scrubbing a floor that will never be truly clean. Today, the garden. The earth is stubborn, frozen in parts, slick with mud in others. Your fingers go numb beneath thin gloves. If you are fortunate enough to have them, silence is required. The only sounds are the scrape of tools, the clink of stones, the breath of tired men. You think of warmth, a foolish thought. There is none here. Sun offers little more than light, and the wind knows no mercy. When the bell rings again, it is time to eat. You enter the refectory. Long tables, worn smooth by centuries of elbows and prayers. You sit where the abbot's system dictates. Rank matters, even among men who claim humility. A bowl is placed before you, gruel, thin, gray, flecked with what might once have been oats. You sip, it tastes of warm water and resignation. Crust of bread follows, dense, dry, hard enough to defend yourself with. You chew slowly, carefully. Chipped tooth is an expensive injury in a place where charity does not extend to the infirm. You eat in silence, no chatter, no laughter, not even the smallest sigh. The abbot's eyes sweep the hall like a hawk searching for a careless mouse. The meal ends with another bell. Always the bell. It calls, it commands, it dismisses. Move again to prayer, then labor, then more prayer. The hours pass not by choice, but by tolling iron. As evening approaches, your body protests more loudly. The cold has sunk into your bones. Your hands are red and raw, your feet numb. You long for rest. A dangerous longing. Compline comes last. It's a chapel, colder now than it was at dawn, swallows your voice with its stone mouth. You pray, not for salvation, not even for comfort, but for endurance. One more day. And then back to your wooden plank. You strip to your thin garments, crawl beneath the damp wool. The straw beneath has settled into a map of every bruise on your body. Sleep comes slowly, if at all. The dormitory breathes around you, soft snores, the shifting of bodies, the ever-present chill. You pull your blanket tighter, though it offers little against the drafts that find their way through ancient stone. Tomorrow, the bell will ring again. You will rise again. The prayers will begin again. And through it all, the abbot will watch. There is no escape. The bell, it governs everything. You might think the abbot commands this place. In truth, it is the bell that holds the monastery by its thin, aching wrist. Its voice slices the air, tolling not with invitation, but with demand. You do not wonder what time it is. You do not need to. The bell will tell you. Again and again and again, until its rhythm seeps into your bones. You rise by the bell. You pray by the bell. You eat, labor, read, and even sleep. If sleep comes, by the bell. When it rings wrong, when its rope trembles beneath some novice's clumsy pull, the entire monastery falters for a breath. It is as though time itself has coughed. There are no clocks here. Time flows not in minutes, but in offices, ours named for prayers, not for the sun. Matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline, each a thin slice of the day. A stone laid atop another, until the weight of them crushes all thought of freedom. You do not own your hours. They are assigned to you like bricks to a wall. And now, the bell calls you to prime. You file again into the chapel, spine straight, gaze lowered. You move as one among many, a tide of rough wool and silent breath. The same cold stone greets you. The same chant begins, and you add your voice, though it scarcely feels your own anymore. Perhaps you once imagined that prayer would lift the spirit, warm the heart. Here it grinds. The words pass your lips with the dull weight of habit, each syllable worn thin from too much use. If you falter, the brother beside you will not move, will not glance, but he will remember, and so will the abbot. You have barely returned to your labor when the bell speaks again, now terse. Another service, another prayer. The day folds upon itself like old parchment, each crease marked by that iron voice. When you return to the gardens, the sun is higher, the cold losing its bite. But your body does not notice. The ache in your back, in your knees, in your fingers, these are old companions now. It will stay through the noon hour and beyond. Noon sext, the bell calls. You stop, you pray. You kneel on the same stone that mocked your frozen feet at dawn. Meals follow, if they can be called that. Again, thin gruel. Again, the bread that tests the strength of your teeth and your patience. Again, silence beneath the hawk-eyed abbot. You long to linger, to steal a moment of warmth from the weak midday sun that filters through the narrow windows. You will not. The bell insists. The bell always insists. Work resumes. Perhaps today you copy texts, eyes straining beneath flickering lamplight, fingers stiff upon the quill. The ink is cold, the words colder, or you return to the kitchens, chopping, scrubbing, hauling. The labor does not vary. Only your weariness deepens, and then none. Another call to prayer. Another hour removed from your keeping. You might imagine that with the sun low in the sky, freedom draws near. It does not. Vespers awaits. An evening of chant and ritual, of standing when you would sit, of kneeling when your legs can barely remember how. Evening comes, gray and reluctant. The day's labor ends not with relief, but with the dull certainty that it will begin again, unchanged, tomorrow. You return to the chapel for Compline, the final office. The brothers gather in weary silence, faces pale beneath their cowls. The candles flicker, their light too thin to warm the stone. You kneel, you pray. The words stumble now, not from lack of devotion, but from exhaustion. If your body leans forward, your mind drifts backward. The abbot's gaze is sharp as ever. The bell falls silent. The brothers file to their dormitory, steps slow, shoulders stooped. You do not speak. You do not linger. Your bed of straw awaits, thin comfort against the night's creeping cold. You pull your rough blanket close, a child's gesture in a man's world. For a moment, you imagine that the silence will last, that perhaps the bell will forget, perhaps the night will stretch long enough for rest. It will not. Already, you hear the faint creak of rope, the rustle of rope. Soon, too soon. The bell will speak again. It will summon you from the thin grasp of sleep back to stone and chant to labor and hunger. And you will obey. For here, the bell is not a tool. It is a master. You wake before the bell, that is the worst part. To lie on your plank bed, beneath your ragged blanket that smells faintly of old wool and older regret, eyes open in the dark, and to know the bell is coming, though it is not yet rung. You can feel it in the marrow of your bones, which ache with cold. You can taste it in the back of your throat, dry as a field left fallow. The body remembers before the mind does. The body is hungry. You have been hungry for so long now that hunger itself feels like a kind of monkhood, another discipline to master, another pain to embrace, or at first it gnawed at you. Now it has woven itself into your very limbs. You feel it in your fingers when they tremble, in your knees when you kneel too long, in your belly, which has learned to complain only in whispers. When you entered this place, you imagined a life of spiritual asceticism. You pictured fasting as a noble trial, a conscious offering to the divine. It is not like that. Fasting here is not chosen. It is the default state. Even when you eat, you do not eat enough. Even when the gruel is hot, it does not fill you. Even when the bread is fresh. On feast days, a rare thing, it seems to shrink in your hands as you bite it. You rise before the bell out of habit, out of the same habit that makes you count your own ribs some nights, beneath the thin cloth of your robe. You can count too many of them now. The floor, as always, is an enemy. Stone, cold as a miser's heart. Your feet numb, barely notice. The bell rings. You go. Prayer's not easier on an empty stomach. The words come slower, heavier, as though each syllable must be dragged through mud. Or your breath clouds before your face, a thin ghost of life. The abbot watches. The cold in the chapel is its own lesson. You would think stone could not feel such malevolence, but here it does. The benches bite, the walls radiate chill. Very air seems to fold itself around you, eager to see which brother will falter first. And you will falter. At prime, as you bow, The world tilts slightly. Your knees buckle. Hunger and cold conspiring to betray you. You catch yourself before you fall, though your vision swims. You say nothing. No one says anything. But the abbot sees. He always sees. When work begins, the cold follows you outside. In the garden, your breath curls like smoke above frozen earth. The hoe is heavy in your hands today, your fingers red and cracked, struggle to grip the wood. Your stomach aches, but not with the sharp hunger of youth. This is an older pain now, dull, constant, companionable. You know it well. You work slowly, not because you wish to, but because you must. The cold seeps through your robe. Your hands ache with the effort of holding even simple tools. You think of warmth, as you always do. Warmth of a hearth, warmth of a full belly, both as distant here as the stars beyond the chapel roof. At sext, the meal comes. You sit at the long table, body trembling with fatigue. Before you, the same bowl. It's gruel, thin, tasteless. The same bread, hard, dry. You tear it with fingers that lack the strength to tear much. The first mouthful is agony. Not because of the food itself, such as it is, but because it reminds your body of what it lacks. The hunger sharpens, fierce and immediate. For a moment, you almost believe you cannot finish the meal. But you do. You always do. Not for pleasure, not for satiety. Only because to leave the bowl unfinished would mark you as weak. And here, weakness is noticed and punished. You think of feasts, not the grand tables of kings, but even the simple ones of peasants beyond these walls. A roast turnip would be a banquet now, a slice of soft cheese, a miracle. But those thoughts are dangerous. The rule forbids them. You are to take joy only in the spiritual feast, the banquet of prayer. It is a banquet that leaves your ribs visible beneath skin grown too thin. The bell calls again. You rise, though every joint protests. The afternoon passes in haze. More work, more cold, more chant. Your lips move through the prayers, but your mind stumbles like a drunkard. The words have grown heavy, harder than stone, more brittle than ice. By vespers, you no longer feel your feet. They have become blocks of ice beneath you, carried forward by habit alone. And when Compline comes, you kneel with the others, trembling. The chapel is a tomb tonight, air thick with the scent of wax, bodies still beneath woolen robes. You try to focus on the psalms. You try not to think of the warmth of a body beside yours, or a fire, or a thick stew heavy with roots and fat. You try to remember that hunger is a test, that cold is a lesson, the body is a prison, and the soul its light. And when you return to your bed, the straw beneath you feels like a distant cousin of comfort. Scratchy, unyielding, perfumed with dust. You curl in upon yourself, one thin barrier against the ice that seeps from wall and floor alike. Sleep comes in flickers. Hunger wakes you before the bell does. It always does. And tomorrow, when the bell tolls once more, the cold will greet you again. The cold, the hunger, the endless fight against the body, a fight you cannot win. Only endure. You might think, after a long day of prayer and labor, that a monk's one consolation would be rest. An island of sleep in a sea of endless duty. You would be wrong. There is no peace in the dormitory. No privacy, no softness, no comfort. Just rows upon rows of wooden planks and thin straw pallets, lined like the teeth of some enormous frozen beast that forgot how to close its mouth. This is where you will lie each night, if lie is the right word. The beds are not truly beds. They are wooden boards, broad enough to discourage dreams of stretching. The straw upon them is old, flattened by the weight of many bodies before yours, prickly as 1,000 dry thistles. Beneath it, the board itself, hard enough to leave the outline of your spine impressed in your skin by morning. Your blanket, one threadbare woolen thing, carries the damp memory of many winters. It smells of mildew, smoke, and something older still. Perhaps the centuries of monks who came before you, each one wrapping themselves in this thin layer of surrender. You sleep in your robe, always. The cold allows no other choice. Even so, the air gnaws through it as a rat gnaws through a sack of grain. Slowly, steadily, without mercy. You lie down. You do not talk. Silence is the rule here, as it is in every corner of this life. The dormitory is filled with the small, miserable sounds of men trying and failing to find rest. The wheeze of breath through tired lungs. The faint rustle of cloth as someone shifts, seeking warmth where there is none. The occasional cough, sharp as a hammer on stone, and the cold. Always the cold. It seeps up from the stone floor. It creeps through the walls, which seem to shiver alongside you. The roof, patched and ancient, allows the wind to whisper through. On the worst nights, frost blooms upon the beams above you. Tiny white flowers that will fall upon your face if you dare to breathe too deeply. Perhaps you imagine that fatigue would bring sleep easily here. The body so worn, the mind so drained. Surely rest would follow as a kindness. No. Your body aches too sharply for that. Your joints throb with cold. Your stomach twists with hunger. Your mind, trained to repetition, cannot escape the rhythm of the day. The prayers echo still, a tide of words lapping against the fragile walls of thought. No. You close your eyes. The darkness brings no relief. In it, your fears grow larger. The fear of the abbot's disapproval, the fear of stumbling in tomorrow's chant. The fear that this life, this endless wheel of frost and prayer, will grind you down until you no longer remember who you were when you first entered these walls. The monk beside you coughs again. The sound shudders through the dormitory like a stone dropped into a frozen pond. You turn inward, drawing your knees up, trying to trap some last breath of warmth against your chest. But the cold finds its way in. There is no softness here, no mattress, no peace. Perhaps you thought, in another life, that monastic sleep would be a thing of simplicity. A plain bed, quiet room, a clean soul at rest. Not so. Here the body fights every moment. You turn carefully, for the straw will scratch. You tuck the blanket tighter. You shift again, trying to ease the ache in your hips, the burn in your knees. The hours pass slowly, marked not by sleep, but by discomfort. When at last exhaustion claims you, it is a shallow thing. A thin drift of unconsciousness that hovers above true rest. The cold will not allow you to fall too deep, nor will the endless creak and groan of the dormitory. The sound of so many men trapped in the same restless prison. And then far too soon, the first light of false dawn touches the walls. You'll hear it before you see it. The faint shuffle of sandals on stone, tightening of belts, the low intake of breath as weary bodies prepare to rise once more. The bell waits. You open your eyes, your limbs resist, your joints scream. But you rise, because to remain would mark you, and the abbot's eyes will be waiting, sharp as frost. You fold your blanket, careful not to show the trembling in your fingers. You smooth the straw, though no smoothing will make it kind. You shuffle into place with the others. Another day begins. Another round of prayer, labor, hunger, cold. There is no room for complaint, no room for rest. There's no room for self. The dormitory empties slowly, like a drained cup. The warmth of bodies leaves with them. Not that there was much to begin with, and you know, tonight you will return here once more, to the same plank, the same straw, the same cold breath, pressing against your skin. You will lie down, you will not rest. The monastery has many walls. Some are stone, ancient, thick, pocked with the scars of forgotten winters. Some are of silence, the vow that binds your tongue when words most wish to flee it. But the strongest wall here is one you cannot touch, though you feel it pressing upon you with every step. The abbot's gaze. It is there when you rise. When you shuffle from your bed with limbs made stiff by cold and straw, it is there when you lower your eyes in the chapel, voice rough from sleeplessness. It is there when you work the stubborn earth, when you copy your letters by failing light, when you kneel in prayer while your belly howls for bread. There's no corner of this place it does not reach. Perhaps you once thought that in taking the habit, you would be left to your thoughts, your prayers, your pursuit of the divine, a life of inner reflection. Here, your inner life is monitored as sharply as your outward one. The abbot knows when you falter in your chant. He knows when your voice hesitates, when your gaze strays, when your step is slow and rising. His eyes, sharp, dark, unflickering, sweep every line of bowed heads with the precision of a hawk hunting field mice. And though he speaks little, the brothers speak even less. For here, the gaze is not only his. You are watched by all. The brother to your left notices if you doze during matins. The brother behind you marks the tremor in your hands as you lift the breviary. The novice beside you, eager to prove his own devotion, may whisper of your stifled yawn before the day end. And such whispers reach the abbot. Always it is said that a monk should be humble, obedient, patient, and so you try. You bow, you kneel, you recite, you labor. But beneath the surface of these duties swims another effort entirely, the constant strain of performing perfection beneath a gaze that misses nothing. You feel it when your stomach growls too loudly in the refectory, when your knees crack audibly upon the cold chapel floor, when your hand trembles slightly as you lift the spoon, thin gruel trembling within it. There are no small faults here. Every misstep becomes a stain upon the record of your obedience. The abbot rarely speaks of these stains. He does not need to. A glance is enough. You see it? A small narrowing of the eyes, a faint tilt of the head, weigh his fingers, pause briefly upon the beads of his rosary, and then the cold certainty settles in your gut. Tomorrow's task will be heavier. Tomorrow's meal perhaps lighter, or no meal at all. And should you speak of this? Should you, in a moment of weariness, utter complaint to a brother, you will soon find yourself before the chapter, head bowed in shame. There is no privacy here. Not in work, not in prayer, not even in the thin hours of the night when you lie upon your plank bed, eyes wide in the dark. Even then, some part of you strains against the invisible net of the abbot. S-will. A net woven through ritual and discipline and the thousand small eyes of your brethren. Perhaps you thought the monastery a place of refuge, a life beyond the petty trials of the world. It is not. Here the trials are smaller, quieter, and all the sharper for it. A misplaced word during chant, a glance held too long. The faint shudder of your body as you kneel upon stone colder than ice. Each one weighed, noted, remembered. You begin to move differently here, not from grace, but from caution. Each step measured, each gesture deliberate. Your face becomes a mask of humble serenity, worn so tightly that you fear in time it will never come off. And beneath it, the hunger grows. The cold seeps deeper. The body protests, loudly at first, then with small bitter sighs. And always, always that gaze. Perhaps you once imagined that in time it would fade, that familiarity would blunt its edge. It does not. The longer you remain, the sharper it feels. You know now that it will follow you to your grave. The abbot's eyes, the brother's whispers, the weight of a life lived beneath the watchful stone gaze of the rule itself. And tonight, as you kneel in Compline, you feel it most sharply of all. The chapel is dark, the candlelight soft as moth wings. The chant rises around you, low and weary. Your breath comes slow, thin. Your knees burn. Your hands tremble faintly upon your lap. And from the shadows at the head of the choir, two eyes gleam, steady, dark, unblinking. You bow deeper, voice faltering. You will not sleep easily tonight. But then you rarely do. You enter the monastery as a humble novice. A life of obedience lies ahead, small duties, smaller expectations. But not everyone here wears the same thin robe of obscurity. There are those whose lives climb higher and fall further. You hear his name whispered first in the chapter house, Suger. At first, it means little to you, just another elder, perhaps. But soon you begin to understand. This is no common monk. Abbot Suger is a man of weight, not the physical kind, though the rich meals served in his private quarters have left their mark. His is the weight of power, of influence, of ambition, clothed in the language of piety. He was not born to this, he learned this too. A minor noble, educated among monks, raised in the very shadows he now rules. Unlike you, he knows the outside world, the court, the king, the language of politics spoken beneath tapestries rather than beneath stone arches. You see him rarely at first. His chamber is high above, behind thick wooden doors, attended by servants who dress better than your brethren eat. But when he walks the cloister, the stones seem to straighten beneath his feet. The monks bow deeper. The abbot's gaze sweeps them all. Sharp as a falcon, serene as carved marble, he does not kneel long in prayer. He kneels long enough to be seen. You learn this lesson well. Under his rule, the monastery changes. You feel it in small ways at first. New glass windows, colored, expensive, are installed in the chapel. You stare at them during matins, when your gaze dares wander. They cast jewel-toned light upon worn stone, beauty laid like a silken cloth over an unyielding life. A rumor says it is Suger's doing, that he brings wealth here through royal favor, that his counsel is sought beyond these walls. The king himself listens when Suger speaks. Perhaps this should inspire reverence. It inspires unease. Wealth follows power, and power invites new eyes. The monastery, once a cloister of quiet struggle, now fills with the rustle of visiting robes. Nobles, merchants, bishops, their soft voices echo where only psalms once did. With them come demands. More gold for the altar. More gifts for visiting dignitaries, or labor from those who have none left to give. You feel it in your own bones as the hours of work lengthen. The bread thins. The gruel turns more water than meal. But the abbey gleams with polished brass, with embroidered cloth, with relics displayed for royal eyes. And when the king comes, you see it. Suger walks before him, robed in silks unseen by common monks. His voice, rich, honeyed, fills the great hall. He speaks of faith, of duty, of the monastery's service to God and crown. You chant that evening until your throat burns. The next morning you kneel upon stone worn colder still. The abbot rises higher. Word comes that he builds anew, a chapel of light and wonder, stone turned into lace, windows wide as heaven itself. Gothic, they call it. A new style, a new glory. You do not question, but as you pull weeds from frozen earth or scrub floors for visiting bishops, a bitter thought creeps in. The stones above grow taller as your strength below grows thinner. Not all monks remain silent. One brother, older, worn by years, he murmurs after Compline, voice thin as a dying reed, "We are here to pray, not to build thrones of glass." You say nothing. You do not need to. The abbot's ears are everywhere. Within a week, the old monk is sent to another house. For rest, they say. You do not see him again. The bell rings louder these days, it seems. And yet pride creeps into you, despite hunger, despite cold. When nobles speak of your abbey, they speak with awe. When the stained glass burns crimson and gold at vespers, even your weary heart stirs. Then the king dies. You hear the news through whispers, through the sudden tension that hums through every prayer. Without royal favor, power withers. Suger fights not with blade, but with words. Alliances spun like spiderwebs across cathedral and court. For a time, he holds fast, but tides turn. The king's successor brings new favorites. New abbots rise. Whispers coil closer to Suger's door. You see him less now. His footsteps grow heavier. The silks still gleam, but the man beneath them seems thinner, more shadow than stone. One evening, after vespers, a messenger arrives beneath the cloister arches. A quiet rider, bearing royal seal. No words reach you. No proclamation is made. But the next morning, Suger does not lead the procession. He does not appear at lauds, nor at prime, nor at mass. Rumors flow swift as the winter wind. Removed, they say. Summoned to court, they say. Fallen, you hear whispered in a shadowed arch. The abbey stands. The glass still gleams. The relics remain. But the halls feel colder, emptier. You know better than to speak of him. To ask is to be marked. But at Compline, as the chant echoes through the dim nave, your gaze lifts once, unbidden, to where Suger once sat. The seat is empty. You bow your head. You pray. Tomorrow, the bell will ring as before. The cold will bite as before. The hunger will gnaw. But the abbey remembers, and so do you. In a monastery, wealth is a strange thing. You do not own it. You do not seek it. You're meant to renounce it, to embrace poverty as a path to purity. Yet wealth seeps through these stone walls like cold through the floor. Slow, unstoppable, leaving traces even when unseen. And under Abbot Suger, wealth arrived not in drips, but in floods. You saw it first in the chapel, where once plain glass let the gray light of dawn in, now windows blazed with color. Red as blood, blue as the deep sea, gold as king's coin. They told stories now, saints and martyrs gazing down from high arches with eyes that glinted in the candlelight. At first you stared in awe, How could you not? The light bathed even your rough robe in colors it had never known. For a moment, in that painted glow, you almost felt another life within reach. But light brings shadow. Soon came the relics, ornate, costly. Reliquaries of gold and silver, their cases encrusted with jewels, displayed beneath gleaming cloths. You processed past them at Mass, eyes lowered, stomach hollow. And always there were visitors. Nobles who cared little for prayers, merchants whose whispered deals echoed through the cloisters, bishops whose fingers trailed across polished stone not as pilgrims, but as men weighing investments. Their donations filled the abbey's coffers. They also emptied your days, tasks multiplied, floors scrubbed until the stone gleamed. Grounds cleared, banners hung. The kitchen labored not for brothers but for honored guests. You chopped wood until your hands blistered, so the abbot's fires would blaze high, even as yours burned low. The new chapel rose slowly, each stone dragged by weary backs, you among them. The builders did not sleep in warm quarters. You shared your straw with the dust of the worksite, your breath fogging in the chill air as dawn crept in. And still Suger smiled. He spoke of beauty, of honoring God with works of wonder. His words rang clear in the chapter house. His vision, he said, would draw all eyes to the abbey, and through beauty, inspire devotion. Perhaps it was so, but the cost was written in your bones. Prayer, hours shortened, then lengthened again. Meals grew thinner as more was given to feed guests. Labor filled the spaces where contemplation once lived. Some monks protested in silence. Their bowed heads held a fraction lower, their voices a fraction fainter during chant. You learned to read these signs, but few dared speak aloud. Those who did, a brother here, a prior there, found themselves transferred or confined to solitary tasks. The abbey grew quiet with its growing splendor, and the king came. His arrival filled the abbey with a noise foreign to its stones, boots striking hard, banners snapping in the wind, the rustle of silk. For 3 days you bent double in service, polishing, carrying, cleaning. You glimpsed Suger at the king's side, robed in cloth richer than anything you would ever touch, a circlet of gold gleaming at his brow. He did not kneel among the brothers. He knelt at court. The feast that followed was not for you. You heard its echoes. Laughter, music, the clatter of fine knives on finer plates, a monk in vestry, a monk invisible in his own house. And yet you did not hate him. How could you? It was the abbey now. His vision built its walls anew. His power drew the king's eye. Without him, the wealth would fade, and with it, perhaps the abbey's place in the world. But in such a place, the fall comes swift. You heard it first in the hesitant words of the cellarer. A missed payment, delayed shipment, a merchant withholding supplies until debts were cleared. Gold flows quickly when one feeds both the poor and the proud. Then came the whispers, a rival at court gaining favor. The king's ear turned elsewhere. The flow of gifts slowed. Visitors came fewer, and those who came brought more expectations than offerings. Suger grew quieter, his gaze sharpened, lingering longer upon bowed heads. Discipline tightened. Small faults were met with swift correction. The warmth of his early rule chilled to the frost of suspicion. You felt it, all did. Brothers moved more warily, voices lowered, laughter rare before, vanished entirely. And still the building rose. Stones laid by hands grown thin. Glass set in frames, though meals shrank by the week. The bell rang as before. You rose as before. But the air grew heavier with each passing day. When the royal summons came, it was no surprise. You saw the messenger's seal, the faces of the priors drawn tight with forced calm. Suger left that evening, his cloak drawn close, his head unbowed. He did not return. What followed was not swift collapse. The abbey stood. The chapel neared completion. The wealth faded slowly, like color leached from worn cloth, but something within the walls had shifted. Now, when you filed into the chapel, the windows seemed colder. The stories they told in glass no longer shone with promise. They weighed upon you. Beauty built from hunger, from bent backs, from long nights beneath frigid stars. You still prayed, you still labored. But when the abbot's seat stood empty at Compline, you did not forget what it had cost to fill it. And as winter crept once more into stone, you knew. In this house of God, no beauty came without its price, and some prices could not be paid in gold. You once thought the cloister was a place of peace, a space apart from the world. Stone arcades open to the sky, cool beneath the arches even in summer. Here you imagined, monks walked in quiet thought, minds lifted to heaven. You learned otherwise. Politics moves here as surely as it does in any royal court. It moves slower, perhaps, but deeper, like the roots of ivy creeping through ancient stone. Under Abbot Suger, you came to see this clearly at first. It was simple. He was abbot, and you, one novice among many. You bowed when he passed. You sang when he led. You labored when he commanded. But soon, you noticed the patterns. The glances exchanged among priors before chapter meetings. The way certain monks gathered in quiet conversation beneath the cloister's west walk. The sudden changes in a brother's. Duties one day, polishing candlesticks. The next sent to scrub the latrines. None of this was chance. In a house ruled by power, loyalty matters. And Suger's power was great, but not invincible. You saw it when new visitors came. Abbots from other houses. Royal messengers. Bishops cloaked in heavy velvet. After they left, the air in the cloister shifted. Voices grew quieter. Brothers avoided certain gazes, and when Suger walked the cloister, he watched not only the arches above, but the faces of those within them. You began to understand beneath the rule, another game was played. One of alliances, of rivalries, of unspoken debts. Some brothers courted the abbot's favor, quick to praise a new relic, swift to denounce a lax chant. They sat nearest at chapter, their robes always well mended, their bowls somehow fuller. On feast days, others held back older monks who remembered different times. They moved with caution, spoke little, but their eyes missed nothing. And then there were the ambitious novices, eager to rise. To become cellars, priors, perhaps abbot one day. You heard their voices sharpen when Suger praised them. Saw their hands linger too long upon a gilded psalter. You marked how their smiles thinned when a rival succeeded. The cloister was no refuge. It was a theater. Each monk an actor beneath the gaze of God and abbot alike, and beneath Suger's. Growing power, the game quickened. With each new gift, each royal favor, the stakes rose. Positions brought, privileges, warmer robes, better food, fewer hours bent beneath the yoke of labor. The cost was vigilance. A single misstep, a wrong word at chapter. A missed beat in chant could see your fortunes reversed overnight. Learn this watching Brother Henry. Once a favorite, chosen to oversee the new library. Praised in chapter 4 his diligence. But then one morning he was absent from lauds, absent again from prime. By sext, the whisper passed through the cloister. He had displeased the abbot. No reason given. No defense allowed. When next you saw him, his face was drawn. His hands stained with oil from the cold stone floors of the guest latrines. He did not speak of it. Did not need to. Even in silence, the politics of the cloister spoke loudly. You adjusted your steps accordingly. Your gaze lowered a fraction deeper. Your speech measured a shade more carefully. But caution was no shield. When the king's favor wavered, the cloister trembled. Those once closest to Suger grew wary. Whispers flickered beneath the arches, alliances reformed. Like ice melting and refreezing in a winter stream, brothers who had flattered yesterday now paused before speaking his name. Those once sidelined stepped forward, voices newly confident. You saw it. All saw it. And Sue, I saw it most of all. His gaze grew sharper in chapter. His words, once laced with honey, took on a brittle edge. Fewer smiled when he passed. Fewer bowed deeply. Politics like the wind. Shift swiftly when the weather changes, and when the royal summons came, when Suger departed beneath a sky dark with gathering clouds, the cloister exhaled as one. Not in relief. Not in sorrow. In uncertainty. For the game had not ended. It had merely begun anew in the days that followed. New faces rose, monks who had waited long in shadow now stepping forward into light. The politics of the cloister flowed on, heedless. Of the man who once ruled it, you walked its paths more warily still. For now, you knew, beneath the stone, beneath the chant, beneath the rule itself, men remained men, and in such a place. Even silence was a language. Even prayer was a mask. Even peace was a fragile thing. Shaped by power, swayed by favor, broken by a single glance, and in the cloister. All glances were seen. Asterisk, asterisk, you have seen many things behind these walls. You have. Seen brothers rise on tides of whispered praise and fall with a glance. You have seen relics gleam in candlelight while bowls remained empty. You have seen the cloister change its skin, stone remains stone, but men shift faster than any tide. And now you see another truth. Perhaps the sharpest of all. Power isolates. It draws others, yes, like moths to flame, but it burns away. The closeness that once might have warmed a man. You watched this happen to Essard in the early days. His steps were light beneath the arches. He spoke with brothers in the refectory, paused to watch the novices at work, led chant with a voice that carried both command and care. You remember this well. You saw his robes brush the stone beside you. You heard his words, not distant, but near. But as the abbey's splendor grew, so did the space around him. At first it was physical. New quarters larger, warmer, guarded by locks you would never touch. The private meals, prepared apart from the brethren. The entourage of clerks and laymen, their faces unfamiliar beneath rich hoods. Then it was the air itself. Brothers once eager to greet began to bow from a greater distance. Conversation with him grew shorter, thinner, laced with caution. In chapter, his seat seemed higher than its stone permitted. His words more weighted, his gaze more distant. Even his presence in prayer changed. Where once he knelt among the brothers, voice rising with theirs, now he remained apart, his place near the relics. Beneath the new windows that blazed with the wealth of kings and counts, you knelt, eyes lowered. Yet you could feel the space between him and the rest grow wider with each passing. Office isolation wrapped him as tightly as any woolen cloak. And yet, this is the cruelty of power. It is rarely seen from within. Suger still spoke of unity. He still spoke of service, of the abbey as one body. The brothers knew. You knew. The body had grown a second skin, one of gold, one of glass. And beneath it, the old warmth faded. You saw it in small ways. In the way younger monks whispered less when he passed, the way older monks watched him with guarded eyes. In the way certain seats remained empty when he called for counsel. Even his voice changed. Once filled with subtle grace, it grew harder. Sharper, a man defending what he had gathered, guarding it against hands both seen and unseen. Perhaps he saw it too. For as the king's favor waned, as visitors thinned, as debts whispered louder than psalms, he noticed another shift. He walked the cloister more often, alone. No clerks. No guards, no gold. Just the abbot, his steps slower, eyes narrower. You saw him pause beneath the old arches, hand resting upon stone, smoothed by 100 years of weary fingers. You saw, for a moment, not the abbot who had commanded kings, but a man who had walked too far from his brethren. And in that pause, that stillness, you glimpsed something rare behind these walls. Loneliness, it clung to him now as power once had. When the royal summons came, the silence in the cloister was deep. No farewells, no procession. Only the sound of sandals upon stone. One man passing beneath arches that had known his rise, and now marked his fall. You watched him go. You did not speak, nor did the others. Silence had grown thick around him, now too dense to break with words. And afterwards the abbey breathed again, but with a chill. For power leaves its trace long. After the man is gone, the relics remained. The gold remained. The chapel's glass still burned with unnatural light. But in the eyes of your brothers, you read caution. For they had seen what you had seen, that in seeking to lift the abbey high, Suger had lifted himself higher still and found only the cold air of isolation waiting. And now, as you walk the cloister, your steps are measured, your words weighed, you bow when called, You labor when commanded, but you remember, the man alone beneath the arch. The hand on ancient stone, silence heavier than gold. And you know, power isolates always. The higher the rise, the colder the air. And here where warmth is rare enough that is a chill no brother wishes. To court, time moves strangely in the monastery. You mark its passage not with calendars but with bells, chants the slow wearing of stone beneath your knees. Years pass like waves against the cliffs, each one carving deeper, until what was once sharp becomes hollowed and smooth, and yet some moments linger sharper than any stone. The rise of Suger was one. His fall, another. You live now in the shadow of both. The abbey stands. The glass gleams still, red, gold, blue. The relics remain beneath embroidered cloths. The walls are scrubbed as fiercely as ever. The rule is followed, as it must be. Outwardly, nothing has changed, but you know better. The brethren know better. You see it in their eyes. In the careful way voices lower when power is spoken of. In the quiet suspicion that flickers when a brother rises too swiftly. In the way new wealth is eyed, not with hunger, but with wariness. You have learned, the whole abbey has learned it, that wealth comes at a cost beyond coin. You remember it when new gifts arrive from a noble's hand. The cellarer receives them with bowed head, but his eyes flick once to the older monks, as if seeking permission. No one speaks. But all remember. You remember it when the prior suggests a new rebuilding, a cloister wall crumbling, a chapel roof in need of repair. The chapter meets in silence longer than usual. Approval comes slow, cautious. No one here wishes to build too high. Not again. You remember it in the way the abbot's chair remains simpler now. The man who followed Suger sits there plainly robed. His voice is measured, his gaze softer though. Never soft enough to forget the lessons of before. And you remember it in smaller ways, in how you polish the candlesticks now with care. Yes, but without reverence for the gold. In how you glance at the relics, eyes lowered, but heart steady. In how your footsteps echo beneath the stained glass where once you felt pride, now you feel weight. Beauty endures here. But it does not fool you anymore. You have seen the hunger it drew from outside these walls. You have felt the ache it placed within them. You have watched a brother's health fade beneath the toil of building. You have watched another vanish beneath the weight of debts whispered, but unpaid, and always. You'll remember Suger. You'll remember his voice once rich with vision, then brittle with fear. You remember his step, once light beneath the cloister, then slow and solitary. You remember his eyes once bright with purpose, then hollowed by isolation. The abbey remembers too. No rule was written to forbid what happened. No new clause was added to the rule of Saint Benedict. The words remain the same, but beneath them now lies an unspoken. Chapter 1, written in the silence that followed. Suger's fall, it speaks louder than any chant. It tells you, beware the hunger for more. Beware the pride that dresses itself. In piety, beware the path that leads upward, for the air grows thin, and warmth is left behind. And so the abbey walks more carefully now. The chant continues. The labor endures. The prayers rise and fall with the bells call, but ambition here moves slowly, its feet weighted with caution. You see it when a brother is praised, and he bows lower, speaks softer. You see it when new novices arrive, wide-eyed, eager, and the elder monks teach them first not to grasp, but to endure. You see it in yourself. Once, perhaps, you dreamed of rising, of holding the keys to the chapter house, of shaping the abbey's path. Now, you dream only of steady hands, a clear voice, and chant. A heart that does not hunger for more than bread and grace. The abbey cannot forget what it has seen, and you neither can you. Each night, beneath the vast glass windows, beneath the carved saints whose painted eyes seem to knowing now, you kneel, you pray, not for splendor, not for favor, not for power, but that you might remember. For here, in this place of stone and silence, the greatest danger is not the cold beneath your straw bed, or the hunger that coils in your belly. It is the hunger of the heart for things that glitter and fade and that hunger, you have learned, devours more swiftly than any wolf beyond these walls. So you bow, you rise with the bell, you labor, you sing, and in the quiet moments, you remember Suger, not with bitterness, not with blame, with understanding and with the firm resolve never to follow where he fell. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You walk the cloister now with steadier steps. The lessons of power linger in your bones, the caution of humility woven into each breath. The abbey breathes more quietly. Since Suger's time, but beneath the surface, another silence stirs, a deeper one. It begins, as so many things do here. With the stone beneath your feet, you have walked these stones 1,000 times. They are worn smooth by the weight of centuries, their edges blunted by the passing of countless sandals. You think you know them, until one day, in the pale light of dawn, a whispered rumor finds your ear. There are tombs beneath the abbey, not the great ones, not the honored dead resting beneath carved effigies in the transept. These are different, hidden, forgotten. You say nothing caution has taught you that, but now each step feels heavier. What lies beneath these stones you have knelt upon so often? What bones sleep beneath your prayers? In time, you learn. More, a novice, bolder than most, claims to have glimpsed a passage, a narrow stair half hidden behind the sacristy. Another brother, old and worn, mutters of tunnels sealed in the abbot's time, of crypts abandoned when the new chapel. Rose, you listen, you remember. And slowly the abbey changes in your eyes. Every hollow ring beneath your step suggests an emptiness below. Every cool draft that stirs the candle flame seems to whisper of unseen chambers. Cluny is no small house. You know this well. Its halls stretch long and high, its chapels many, its foundations deep. Once the greatest monastery in Christendom, they say built to house the prayers of hundreds, the relics of saints, the ambitions of a BBOTS, and the dead so many dead. You begin to notice other things. Small shifts in the stonework along the older walls. Marks where once there were hinges. Arches now bricked closed. In the library, you find mention of burials. Monks interred in ancient vaults, long sealed. Their names fading from the rolls. No. One speaks of them openly. Perhaps they fear what lies below. Perhaps they fear to awaken old rivalries, for even the dead here once played the games of power. One evening, as you scrub the sacristy floor, a penance well earned, though you will not say for what your hand brushes something strange, a seam, a line where stone meets stone too perfectly. You glance about. No one watches. Carefully, slowly, you press. The slab shifts, barely but enough. A faint breath of air, cold and dry, rises from the gap. Your heart pounds harder than the bell. At lots you say nothing, but from that night on, you walk the cloister with new awareness. The abbey is not what it seems. Beneath its chanting voices, beneath its golden light, beneath the weight of its rule, another world lies silent, and it waits. Later, weeks, perhaps months, a brother entrusted with the care of the archives. Whispers a fragment in passing, they buried more than bodies below, secrets too. And some would rather they remain so. You do not ask him to explain. Some nights, as you lie upon your thin pallet, you imagine them. Rows of stone coffins, dust thick upon their lids, bones wrapped in rotting cloth. Rings upon skeletal fingers, or empty, the treasures long taken. You imagine scrolls sealed in iron-bound chests, relics that saw too much light, now hidden from the world, names struck from the record, yet carved forever in cold stone, and always, always the weight. Above, the abbey, you know, pressing down upon the forgotten below. Once, perhaps you would have been content with this mystery. But now it tugs at you, a thread you cannot help but follow in thought, if not in deed. You begin to watch the masons when repairs are made. You listen when the older brothers speak after too much wine on feast days. You note which corners of the abbey no novice is sent to clean. And slowly, shape forms in your mind a map of what might lie below. You do not seek it. Not openly. But in your prayers a new petition creeps in that you might understand, or else forget. For some knowledge is heavier than stone, and beneath this abbey of prayer and penance, you sense another weight entirely, the weight of the dead, and their silence speaks louder than any bell. The abbey rises high now, stone upon stone, arches wide as arms spread in benediction. The bells sing from towers once planned only in dreams. The sunlight gilds the great windows with stories of salvation. Visitors walk in awed silence beneath the vaults. But you walk with different eyes. For beneath this splendor lies another abbey. One few speak of, one fewer still have seen. You think often of the builders, those whose hands shaped the stone beneath your feet. Not the masters whose names survive in fine script, but the men whose sweat seeped into the very mortar, whose bones ached long after the last stone was laid, and whose paths remain below. You learn this in fragments from an old master mason's son, now a lay brother, with hands too crippled for stonework, but eyes still sharp with memory. From scraps of vellum found in the library, detailing foundation works no longer mapped. From whispered tales passed between novices on cold nights. There are tunnels, they say. Passages carved during the great expansions, when Cluny sought to touch the heavens. Ways left behind as scaffolds came down and walls rose high. It's not meant for men now, yet they're still. You hear of them first as rumor, but slowly the signs gather. A cold draft in a stairwell, long disused. Out a door sealed with iron bars, its lock, so rusted no key will turn it. The faint echo of water where no fountain runs. You begin to listen differently. The great abbey chants above, but beneath. You feel a deeper rhythm, the slow breath of stone upon stone, the weight of centuries. Pressing down, the builders knew this weight. They carved beneath the abbey to lay its bones, strong pillars, deep vaults. And in doing so, they left paths. Some by design to haul stone and timber, to move unseen. Others by necessity, a place to store tools, to hide mistakes, to bury what must not be found. You wonder what they buried? Some speak of bones. Monks whose sins were too great to lie beneath the church proper. Others of treasures hidden in times of war, never reclaimed. Still others of secrets, meant to die with those who laid the stone. You do not know the truth, but the abbey whispers it to you in small ways when you pass the old cloister walk. The stones bear strange marks, not of chisel, but of rope dragged heavy across the floor. When you light the lamps in the crypt and feel a cold air stirring from cracks that no draught should reach. Once late, it's too late for any but the sleepless. You linger in the library. The wind howls outside. The walls tremble softly. A book lies open before you, forgotten by some careless brother. You read it as though by fate. It speaks of the great works, passages carved beneath the east transept, now sealed. Of a well, dug not for water, but for ritual use. Its purpose left unstated. Stairs cut and then hidden, bricked over in haste. You close the book. You breathe slower. You know now what your feet already suspected. The builder's paths remain, and part of you longs to walk them, not for greed, not for pride, but because some truths cannot be left to dust alone. Yet caution binds you. Too many stories end in silence. You think of the novice, years ago, who vanished for 3 days, found at last in the old sacristy, fevered and raving. He spoke of voices in the dark, of steps where no man walked, of a door that opened and would not. Close, they said he dreamed. You are not so sure you have dreams now, too, of winding stairs slick with damp, halls so narrow, the stone brushes both shoulders, of bones glimpsed by failing light, an echo that is not your own. You wake with breath caught in your throat. Still, the hunger remains. One evening, the chance comes. A brother tasked with clearing an old store finds a narrow door warped, near forgotten. The prior frowns, speaks of disrepair, but the cellarer, older and less fearful, speaks softly, that leads below. You volunteer to aid. No one refuses. By lamplight, you descend slowly, breath shallow. The air thickens, the walls close in, path narrows, stone steps worn and uneven. The smell of earth, old and damp, it's a faint tempest of iron, not blood, but not far from it. And then the passage opens. Before you lies a space untouched, vaulted low. Stone columns rise like the trunks of some subterranean forest. Dust coats all. Bones lie in niches, orderly, forgotten, not saints. Not honored dead, simply, ... left. Among them, old tools. A wheelbarrow rusted through, chains coiled like a serpent at rest. A lantern black with soot. And in the center, slab, bare, cracked, no name, you do not linger. Some knowledge feeds the mind. Some feeds only fear. You return in silence. You say nothing. But now, when you walk the cloister, when you chant beneath the great vaults, and the bells ring overhead, you feel them. The builders' paths remain. Their hands shaped this house of prayer, and beneath it, they carved another house still. A house of silence. A house that watches. A house you will not forget. Asterisk, asterisk, the tombs stay with you, not in sight. You do not return. Not in word, you dare not speak of them. But in thought, they follow. Quiet, persistent. As a drop of water finds the same stone again and again, you walk the cloister. The bells ring, the chants rise, the brethren file from prayer to work, and back again. On the surface, all is as it should be, but beneath, something stirs, not in the tunnels now, but in you. Once you looked upon these stones as solid, certain. Now they seem thinner. Each archway feels like a skin stretched tight over forgotten bones. Each polished floor hides. Echoes you alone seem to hear. Memory here is a strange thing. The rule teaches you to live in the moment, to seek humility, patience, presence. But presence falters when the past breathes so close. You find yourself tracing old carvings along the cloister. Columns' faint symbols lost to most eyes. You catch yourself counting the steps from nave to transept, wondering what lies beneath each. You kneel in prayer, yet your mind wanders downward, and you are not alone. You notice it in others, subtle as smoke. The brother who crosses himself twice. When passing a certain pillar, the novice who avoids the eastern stairs. The old mason's son, who now pauses before each prayer, as though hearing an unseen voice. The tombs remain sealed. The abbey above continues. But the weight of memory presses upward, stone against stone. At night it grows heavier. You lie upon. Your pallet, blanket pulled tight against the creeping cold. You listen to the breath of your brothers, the soft coughs, the restless shifts. And beneath it all, deeper still, you imagine the breath of those below. Not ghostly, not spectral. Simply present. Bones do not speak. But they remember. And in a house where so many sought to rise in spirit, in power, in stone, those who fell are not forgotten easily. You begin to wonder how many buried for duty, how many for shame, how many simply left. What stories lie in the dust that coats their unmarked slabs. The builders carved more than stone. They carved memory into the earth. And memory here proves hard to silence. You find yourself asking questions you dare not voice. Why were some sealed below? Why hidden, not honored? Why do no prayers rise for them in the great nave above? You do not ask aloud. But the questions cling like the dust upon your robe after sweeping the oldest halls. One morning at Lauds, your voice falters. A single note off in the psalm. No one chastises you, but you feel the glance, the prior's eyes sharp, the abbot's softer, knowing they too remember. Later, while repairing an old choir stall, your chisel strikes hollow beneath the wood. A cavity, not large, but enough to unsettle. Patch it in silence, heart quickened. How many voids lie beneath the surfaces you touch each day? Even your tools seem heavier now. In the scriptorium, you copy a sermon on impermanence. All. Flesh is grass, it says. Your quill trembles. You press harder, The ink-pooling grass may wither, you think? But stone remembers, and Cluny remembers too much. You begin to understand why the old monks speak less, why their chants grow softer with age. They carry the weight of years, and beneath those years, the weight of memory unspoken. Yet you are young still. The hunger for understanding bites as sharply as any winter wind. You wish to know, to see, to uncover what lies below, but caution holds you. For you have seen what happens when curiosity outpaces wisdom. You remember the fevered novice, the eyes too wide, the breath too fast. Some knowledge cannot be unlet. And so you walk the line, you chant, you labor, you obey, outwardly unchanged. Inwardly watching, listening, remembering. The Abbey teaches many things. But this lesson, it leaves unspoken. Stone is not silence, memory is not still. And beneath the weight of centuries, nothing remains truly buried. In time, perhaps the tunnels will collapse, tombs will crumble. The last who remember will fade. But today now, they endure. And you, bound by duty and fear alike, endure with them. You do not speak. You do not descend again. But when the bells ring, when the chant swells, when the great windows burn with light, you glance once to the floor beneath your feet, and you remember the dead lie below, and memory weighs more than stone. Relics. You think you know them. The Abbey displays its treasures with reverence. Bones of saints gleam within golden cases draped in silk. Splinters of the true cross, thorns from the crown, so they say, rest beneath embroidered cloths. The faithful come to kneel, to pray, to seek a touch of the divine. But you have seen the hidden side of Cluny, and now you wonder how many relics lie unshown, unseen, and why. It begins with a whisper, as many things do. The cellarer, older now, speaks softly one cold morning as you carry sacks to the storeroom. His words drift, like the dust in the shaft of light that pierces the gloom. Not all relics sit beneath gold. You glance at him. His eyes gleam, weary, amused, knowing. Some lie beneath stone, some beneath fear. He says no more, but the thought roots deep. You recall the sealed vault beneath the sacristy, the nameless slab, the coils of old chain, a rusted wheelbarrow abandoned in dust, bones laid without honor. And you wonder, what else was sealed away? In the scriptorium, you seek clues. The old registers speak of relics once held, now unmentioned. Oh, a silver reliquary of St. Maurice, last recorded decades ago. A fragment of St. Denis's robe, noted as damaged, no further entry made. Where are they? You ask no one. Questions here are watched as closely as men, but you listen. And over long weeks the fragments come together, scraps of talk, faded notations, a stray comment from a brother whose duties keep him close to the crypt. There were relics hidden, not lost, hidden. Some for protection in times when the Abbey stood threatened, others because their presence stirred unrest. A vial of darkened oil said to weep without ceasing. A bone whose relic brought visions none wished to see. A chalice engraved with symbols older than the church it served. You cannot be sure which tales are true, but you can be sure of this. Beneath Cluny lie relics time tried to bury, and memory, as you have learned, does not bury easily. One evening, while copying ancient inventories, you find an entry half scraped from the page. The words barely remain beneath the knife's stroke, placed below ... Easter ... by command of ... for cause of ... unrest. You breathe slower. There is an Easter, long sealed. The next day, under pretext of cleaning, you pass near it, a blank wall where stonework mismatches the rest. The air here is cooler, thinner. The lamp in your hand flickers, though no wind stirs. You do not linger. For some knowledge calls louder than wisdom counsels, but it is too late to unhear what you know. You walk now with ears sharpened to stray words. You watch where brothers tread. Lightly. You note which corners of the Abbey remain unswept, untouched, and one night beneath a pale and silent moon, You pass the refectory late. Voices drift from the crypt below, low, careful. You catch a single phrase before the sound fades. It is not for display. You shiver, not from cold. For you know now, the Abbey guards more than relics. It guards its past. The past guards its own. The next days pass in a haze of chant and labor. You keep your head low, your voice steady. But beneath your words, thought stirs restless. You dream of locked chests beneath dust, of hands trembling over aged bone, of a chalice that gleams, though no light strikes it. You wake each time with breath caught, heart racing, and through it all, the Abbey stands, serene above, shadowed below. You begin to wonder, what price was paid to keep these relics unseen? What secrets sleep beneath the stone? What bargains were struck in the name of peace? You know this. Some relics inspire, some divide, some consume. Perhaps that is why the abbots chose stone over gold for these. And so you chant, you labor, you bow when called. You hold your silence as tightly as your rule demands. But when you kneel beneath the great windows, when the light of saints dances upon the floor, you glance once, just once, to the cold stones beneath. And in that glance lies a truth no chant can silence. Some relics were not meant for display. Some were meant to be forgotten. And in the house of Cluny, beneath its glory, time hides what memory dares not. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You tell yourself that memory will fade. You tell yourself that days of chant, of labor, of cold stone and rule will soon press out the images of the dust, of the bones, of the whispered words below, but memory here is stubborn. It lodges in your mind like straw in a rough woven tunic. No matter how you shake it loose, it scratches, scratches again. You wake some mornings with the weight of stone in your chest. You dream of steps winding downward, of doors half sealed, of the faint gleam of rusted iron. You taste the dry air of forgotten halls, though your mouth knows only the morning's bitter bread. And always, beneath each dream they watch. You do not know who they are. Not saints, those rest in honored tombs. Not relics, those shine in the sunlit nave. No, these are older, quieter, the quiet watchers beneath. You think first of bones. Of monks unnamed, their lives spent in chant, now lying in cold embrace. But the sense that lingers in you is older. Still, you feel it in the cracks of stone beneath your feet, in the cool breath of forgotten air along the lowest stairs. You feel it in the hush that falls too swiftly in certain corners, where the candle flames tremble without cause. You try to reason with yourself. It is stone, it is dust, it is time. But reason bends beneath what you know now. The builders carved these passages not in ignorance. The abbots sealed them not in whim. And those who spoke of unrest, of relics too dangerous to display, were no fools. You sense now why they left watchers behind? Not spirits, not shades. Simply memory shaped so dense, so layered in stone and silence that it breathes even. When no man does, you walk more lightly now. In the cloister, beneath the stained glass saints, you measure your steps. In the scriptorium, your hand lingers longer upon ancient pages. It's in the crypt, you do not look too long at the sealed arches. Others notice. The old mason's son nods once, as if to say, now you understand. And you do. Some knowledge is not carried. It carries you, and the watchers beneath do not forget. You begin to see their traces in small things. A line of dust disturbed where no foot is trod. A faint, sharp scent of earth where no window opens. A scrap of linen caught behind a stone, frayed with age no brother here can remember. The brethren do not speak of these signs, but their eyes shift, their hands move with care when such things appear. You watch. You learn the watchers beneath are not malevolent, nor are they kind. They are simply present. A presence so steady, it reshapes the abbey's breath. It binds the rule tighter. It weighs upon the silence of prayers. Some days you envy the younger novices, their eyes still clear of such knowledge, their dreams still filled with chant and daylight. But envy fades quickly here. And you know, once the watchers touch your mind, they remain. You feel it in your bones when the bell tolls to hollow. You feel it in your breath when incense fails to mask the colder scent rising from below. And when you kneel at Compline beneath the towering vaults, feel their gaze, not hostile, not warm, simply ... watching. You lower your eyes, not in fear, in respect. For beneath this house of prayer lies another house, a house of memory, of silence, of the unseen. And you, now, are part of both. You wonder sometimes why this burdens you more than the rule itself, why the watchers weigh heavier than hunger, than cold, than labor. Perhaps because the rule tells you what to do. The watchers tell you only what to remember, and memory. Here is the hardest burden of all. Still, you rise with the bell, you labor, you chant. You do not seek the sealed doors again. You do not speak of what lies beneath. But when the great feast, days come when relics are carried high in procession, when light blazes from the windows and the chant soars high, you glance once to the floor beneath your feet, and you remember the watchers still wait, and they see what the Abbey tries to forget. You know hunger well. You know its shape in your belly, the sharpness of it after long days of labor. You know the sound it makes, the soft groan beneath your ribs when the gruel is thin and the bread is air. You know the taste of humility with every bite, but one hunger you see from a distance. It fills the Abbot's hall, and it is not for food alone. It is a hunger for power. The Abbot's hall is not part of your daily round. You pass its doors, yes, tall, carved with saints, who look down as if judging who enters and who waits beyond. You sweep the cloister nearby, you kneel in the chapel above, but the hall remains apart until feast days. Then the doors open, and the Abbey remembers its place in the world. Visitors come. Nobles, bishops, merchants, bold enough to seek favor. Robes of silk brushstone worn by wool. Rings glint where work-rough hands would hesitate to reach. Laughter echoes where silence usually reigns, and the Abbot presides not among the brethren, but at the high table, a seat carved and cushioned beneath a canopy of embroidered cloth. His cup is silver, his bread white, his meat seasoned with herbs your kitchen barely dares to name. You do not sit here, you do not serve here, but sometimes you are sent to observe, to carry wine, to clear plates, to glimpse this other world. It is strange here. The rule bends, its voices rise and cheer. Wine flows more freely than prayers. Hierarchy gleams as sharp as a blade, where every bow carries weight. Every word is measured like coin you watch. A bishop jokes too loudly, the Abbot smiles thinly. A noble's son reaches first for the platter. A glance from the steward corrects him. A merchant flatters too eagerly, his cup remains less. Full, and beneath it all, the true feast is one of power. Plates come heavy with food your table never sees. Roasted birds, their skin glistening. Fish layered in spiced sauces. Honeyed fruits, soft cheeses, bread that cracks not your teeth but melts upon the tongue. You carry such plates with hands that tremble slightly, not from weight, but from the nearness of what is denied. And you learn, hunger is not the only thing served here. Ambition eats as well. The Abbot dines sparingly at first, a bite, a sip, a smile measured for each guest. But you see the moments when caution slips, when his gaze lingers too long upon a merchant's gift, when his fingers trace the gold of a chalice before lifting it. He knows the game, plays it well. You wonder, as you clear the scraps, what bargains pass unseen in the passing of salt? What promises ride the rise of a toast? You do not ask, but you remember. Later in the refectory, your meal is as thin as ever. Gruel that stirs with more water than grain. Bread that challenges your teeth before it feeds your stomach. Yet you eat without complaint. The rule binds you here, as surely as it does the brothers beside you. And you know within the Abbey's walls, 2 tables are set. One of hunger, one of power. You walk between them now. When the feast ends, the hall empties. The rich scents of spiced meats linger in the air, a perfume of pleasures past. You sweep the floor, hands steady, breath measured. Upon the table, crumbs remain. a half-eaten fig, a crust of soft bread, a bone stripped near clean. You glance once to the door. You know the rule? No scraps to pass to lesser hands. Yet hunger does not heed rules. You take one crumb, small, almost nothing. Press it between your fingers, feel its softness, place it upon your tongue. It tastes of more than food. It tastes of the distance between the cloister and the hall, and you know. Some walls here are thicker than stone. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You once thought a table was a simple thing. Wood and nail, plank and joint. A place to set bread, to share a meal, to rest the hands between labor and prayer. But in the Abbot's hall, the table is a map, and each place upon it is a kingdom. You have seen this now. It's too many times to forget. It begins before the feast. The hall hums with preparations, not just of food, but of placement, of seating, of the subtle dance that sets the tone before a single dish is served. Who sits near the abbot? Who sits far? Who is placed beneath the eyes of all? And who near the shadowed corners where words may pass unheard? These choices matter more than the choices to meat or the finest wine. You learn this swiftly, sent to assist the steward. As he sets the places, his fingers move with practiced care, a knife laid at just the right angle. A goblet turns so that its gilded rim catches the light, and when he pauses, brow furrowed, you see the weight of each choice. The count wishes to be seen near the bishop, he murmurs. But the bishop dislikes the merchant beside him, and the abbot. The meaning does not. The abbot's will shapes the table, though his hand does not set it. You watch as places shift, a seat moved down, space widened, just enough to suggest distance without offense. And so the table forms a map of alliances, of rivalries, of favors owed and debts unpaid. When the guests arrive, the game begins. Their steps slow as they near the hall, eyes flickering across the settings. Relief, pride, annoyance. You see it all in the tightening of jaws, a forced curve of smiles. The abbot watches too. From his high seat beneath its rich canopy, he sees the map laid bare. Each glance, each hesitation, each too bright laugh. All speak louder than words, and as the first dish is served, the true feast begins. You serve with steady hands, eyes lowered but not blind. You see how the merchant leans toward the bishop, voice low with praise too sweet. How the bishop turns, eyes cool, his goblet lifted in dismissal. You see the count's son offer a jest, bold, ill-timed. The abbot's smile freezes, then fades. The steward's glance follows swiftly. You see the subtle battle for the abbot's attention, a well-timed toast, a comment that echoes his own words. A nod held just long enough to mark respect, but not servility. And you see the silences sharper than any speech. A guest whose words fall unheeded. Another whose plate empties too slowly, appetite dulled by some unseen slight. Above all, you learn this. The table serves more than food. It serves power. Each course brings its shifts with the roast. Merchant gains favor. His comment on the abbey's new windows draws a rare nod from the abbot. With the fish, a bishop tests the count's patience. A pointed tale of land disputes that sets fork clinking upon plate. With the final course, honeyed fruits, rich cheeses, the game deepens. Wine flows, tongues loosen, caution thins, and now the watchers move. You see it in the steward's glance, in the quiet note passed from servant to servant. Words heard here may walk beyond these walls or vanish beneath them. You see how the abbot chooses his moments? A well-placed question. A smile at the merchant whose purse may yet grow lighter for the abbey's sake. A silence when the bishop speaks of royal favor. You see, too, the ones left adrift, their words faltering, their gaze uncertain. They will leave with less than they came, and when the feast ends, the map shifts once more. Guests rise, some with heads high, some with glances wary. The abbot's farewells are measured, each word a stone upon the scales of favor. You clear the table, the wood beneath your fingers bears, the faint warmth of hands now gone, hands that played their part in a game you will not join. but you have learned its rules. Later in the refectory, your meal is plain as ever, yet the map of the abbot's table lingers in your mind. You know now in the abbey, as in the world beyond, not all hunger is for bread, and some tables serve a feast. That feeds no stomach. You return to the cloister after the feast. The air feels colder now, thin, sharp against your face after the thick warmth of the abbot's hall. The stones beneath your feet press harder against your soles, as if reminding you this is where you belong. You walk slowly. The rule teaches humility, patience, charity. You recite it daily. You have copied it word by word on stiff vellum with an aching hand. You've chanted its precepts until your tongue could barely form the Latin. But tonight, something else walks with you beneath these arches. Division, you saw it at the table. You feel it now in the small silences between brothers, and glances that last a moment too long. In the faint edge that coils beneath even the softest words, the feast is meant to honor the abbey's guests, yes, but it has done something else. It has reminded the brethren harshly that not all men at Cluny are equal, not when gold gleams on goblets while your own bowl is thin with watery broth. You hear it first in whispers, quiet as such things must be. In the scriptorium, a novice leans too close to another. They feast while we fast. The words are no louder than a breath. In the garden, where the older monks walk slow beneath a pale sun, one mutters, voice rough with age, "So much for poverty." You say nothing, but you feel the words press against your ribs as surely as the rule itself. The next morning, the chapel is full. The chant rises, as it always does. But the voices lack warmth. The notes seem thinner, the breath behind them cooler, and, when the chant fades, the silence is sharper. You walk the cloister, robe wrapped tight against the morning chill. You count the steps, though you know each one by heart. Today the counting helps. 1, 2, 3. A small defense against the shift you feel around you in the kitchen. Where you are sent that day, the mood is worse. The brothers who served, in the hall, say little. They work with hands more careful, voices more clipped. Their eyes flick toward each other, not with kinship, but with calculation. You see it when bread is divided. One brother cuts the loaves with more force than needed. Another hesitates before taking his piece, gaze narrowing for the briefest moment. You take your portion without comment, but you see, and you understand. The feast fed more than bodies. It fed comparisons. You remember the plates you cleared. The meat glistening with juices, the cheeses soft and rich, the golden-skinned birds laid out in rows. You remember the wine, dark and fragrant, poured with a grace that mocked the water you sipped daily. You remember the smiles that seemed thinner. As the courses progressed, the glances that sharpened as the hall emptied, the hands that trembled just slightly on polished wood, and you know the guests were not the only ones served that night. Ambition was served too. Envy, pride, and now those courses linger, later than bread in an empty stomach. Later in chapter, the abbot speaks of unity. We are one body, bound by the rule. The feast honored our guests, as hospitality commands. You bow your head with the others. You chant the responses. But you feel the weight in the room, the heaviness behind each voice, the brittle silence that follows. You know the brothers feel it too. You see it that evening in the cloister walk, too. Novices who once walked together now part at the archway, one turning to swiftly toward the garden. It's an older monk, known for his patient counsel, walks alone. Head bowed deeper than the rule requires. At supper, the refectory holds its usual fare. Thin gruel, crusted bread, the faintest taste of cabbage from some weary pot, but the silence is sharper. You hear fewer murmured prayers before the meal. You see fewer glances exchanged, and as you eat, feel it, the divide settling in like a cold beneath the skin. You rise afterward, clearing your bowl with care. The novice beside you hesitates a moment before moving, not out of fatigue, but thought you do not speak. Your silence now weighs heavier. Later you pass the old cellarer. He stands alone near the wine stores, eyes fixed on a small, empty cup. Not all drink equally, he says. So softly you almost think you imagined it. You walk on, and that night as you lie upon your pallet, is fixed upon the worn beams above, you feel the lesson of the feast burn sharp within you. The abbey is one. Body, but some limbs feel the cold more than others. You sleep poorly. Dreams flicker of tables too long, seats too distant, of bread always just out of reach. And when the bell tolls before dawn, you rise with the others. You pull your robe close. You step into the chapel. You tumescent. You chant again, that they may be one. But beneath the chant, you know, tonight the abbey is many voices, and some sing more softly than before. Asterisk, asterisk, the rule does not speak of. Favor it speaks of obedience, of humility, of poverty freely embraced. It speaks of the common life, the common table, the common prayer. But favor moves through this abbey like smoke, thin, curling through unseen spaces, leaving a scent that lingers long after the flame dies. You know this now. You have seen it. You saw it in the hall, how a word well-placed brought a fuller cup, how a gift well-timed brought a warmer smile. You saw how brothers watched from the edges, as measuring more than bread and wine, and in the days after, you see it everywhere. You see it in the steward's glance, sharper now, more calculating. You see it in the way the cellarer's burdens lighten, the way certain brothers receive lighter tasks, warmer cloaks. Bread just a little softer than the rest. You see it in how words are weighed before the abbot, how smiles widen with effort. When he walks the cloister, and you see the cost at first, it seems small. A brother once quick to greet, now hesitates, gaze flicking first to the abbot's seat before he speaks. A novice, once eager in labor, now watches who is watching him. In the scriptorium, a copied page bears small errors, not from ignorance, but from a hand distracted by thought. In the choir, voices waver, not in volume, but in conviction. The cost is not paid in coin. It is paid in trust. You feel it yourself. One morning, you are sent to assist the kitchen, a task beneath the hall's vaulted ceiling. You serve with care, hands steady. You speak only as required, but as you carry. A pitcher of wine, you hear the words, "Brother Gijum served well at the feast," the steward says. The abbot remembers such service. The tone is smooth, the meaning is sharp. You set the pitcher with care. You bow, you leave, but the words follow you. That evening in the refectory, you sit with the others. The bread is rough, the broth thin, the air colder than before, and when Brother Gijom enters, a space opens slightly at the bench. Not wide, not spoken, but enough. He sits, he eats. He does not meet your eyes. Favor has its cost. You see it again when the next feast draws near. Preparations begin, the hall scrubbed, the vessels polished, the rarest cloths aired beneath. Pale sun, and the brothers watch, not the guests, not the dishes. Each other, you see the smallest things, a brother standing straighter before the abbot, a novice lingering near the steward, words chosen too carefully, laughter too quick to follow. The abbot's jest, and you feel the weight of it. Not all favor is granted for worth, and not all favor is sought without hunger. The rule does not forbid honor, but honor won through flatteries leaves a bitter taste. You taste it now. You taste it when you see Brother Henry, once steady and plain of manner, now speaking more. Swiftly, eyes brighter than before, you taste it when you hear a novice praise the abbot's wisdom too often, too easily, and you taste it when a brother known for harsh tongues suddenly receives finer wool for winter's chill. The abbey breathes. Slower now, not in chant, the chant endures, but in its spaces between, the cloister walks feel narrower, the garden air sharper, the refectory colder, not in warmth but in gaze. You labor, you chant, you bow, but you walk more carefully, and you wonder what cost would you pay. A warmer cloak? A softer bed? A task spared? You tell yourself, none, but the thought lingers, and you know, here even the thought has its cost. One evening, late, you pass the old prior in the cloister. His step is slow, his gaze deep. He speaks softly. Without pause, the rule binds the body. Favor binds the soul. You bow, you walk on, and that night, beneath thin wool and cold stars, you dream not of prayer, not of stone, but of tables too wide, of voices too sweet, of hands grasping too quickly. And when you rise at the bell, you rise with a new weight. In your heart, you will serve as called, you will labor as required, but you will remember, favor has its cost, and the Abbey pays it in silence. You would think the Abbey would breathe easier once the guests depart. You would think the feast, having ended, would fade like smoke beneath the rafters, leaving only the slow, steady rhythm of the rule once more. You would be wrong. The echoes of the feast linger long after the last goblet is emptied. The last guest bowed through the great doors. You feel it first in the air. The morning after, the Abbey hums quieter than usual, not with peace, but with the hush that follows too much noise. The brothers move carefully, as if afraid to disturb the fragile calm now draped across the cloister. The hall stands empty, but not forgotten. The scents of roasted meats, of spiced wine, of rich cheeses cling to the air like stubborn ghosts. You smell them even as you scrub the floors. Cloth rough beneath aching hands, and with each breath, you remember the clatter of fine knives, the gleam of polished goblets, the careful tilt of the abbot's head as he measured each guest's word. You remember the hunger that rose in your throat as you cleared half-eaten fruits, soft bread, meats left for show, more than sustenance. You remember the eyes of your brothers, sharper with envy, dulled with resignation. These things do not vanish with the feast, they settle deeper. In the days that follow, the Abbey seems both the same and not. The bells toll as they should. The chants rise in the chapel. The work continues. The rule binds all. But beneath the surface, small fissures widen. You see it in the cloister. Two brothers who once spoke, easily now passing without nod or glance. You hear it in the refectory, the chant before meals quieter, the shared benches holding a faint tension. You see it most in the youngest. Their eyes flick more often toward the abbot's seat. Their voices hold new eagerness when chosen to serve. Their steps quicken when the steward passes. Favor has planted its seeds. You watch it grow, and you know once sown.
Seeds?
Do not wither easily. The older monks watch too. You notice how the cellarer lingers in the garden, eyes narrowed against the sun. How the infirmer spends longer in the sick room, as if the silence there soothes more than the chant now can. Even the abbot seems changed. He walks the cloister with the same measured pace, the same folded hands, but his gaze lingers a fraction. Longer upon each brother, as if weighing not piety, but loyalty. And when he speaks in chapter, words of unity, of duty, of humility, they land heavier than before. Not because they ring false, but because they must be spoken. You hear them. You chant the responses, but in your heart. The feast has left more than full bellies and weary hands. It has left its mark. You feel it in the work. Tasks once shared without. Question now invites small glances. Who was chosen? Who was not? Praise given carries new weight. Silence carries more. You feel it in prayer. Voices hesitate a heartbeat longer. Bows dip a fraction lower. The space between one brother and another holds more than mere cloth and air. You feel it, most of. All in yourself. You sweep. You chant. You serve. But your thoughts stray more often to what you saw, the favor given, the glances shared. The hunger that fed more than bodies. And when you kneel in the chapel, gaze lowered, hands folded, you feel the floor beneath you colder than before. The Abbey breathes. The rule holds. But the feast lingers still. Time will smooth some of this. It always does. New tasks will come. New chants will rise. The daily rhythm will pull the mind back to its course. But some changes remain. You see it already in a novice's eager step, in a brother's wary glance, in your own measured breath. And when the next feast is called, as it will be, these echoes will rise again, stronger for having been pressed down. You stand in the cloister one evening, dusk soft upon the stone. The hall looms silent now, its great doors closed, but within its walls, the feast breathes still, and in the abbey, the echoes do not fade. You have walked the cloister. You have knelt on cold stone. You have seen the feast in its shadow. You have glimpsed what lies beneath the abbey and what rises above it. Now, as the last chant fades and the great hall stands empty once more, the abbey breathes in silence. So do you. The rule remains. The stones remain. The hunger both of body and of heart remains. But tonight you step lighter across the worn floor. You carry what you have seen and what you will not say, and you know it will repeat tomorrow, as it always does.